After abusing me for my entire life, my parents finally started loving me, but only after realizing they could make money off of me. I ruined my parents' lives before I was even born. They were the dream power couple, met in high school, went to the same university, had a dream about backpacking across continents together, and then, during sophomore year, they didn't use a rubber. My father fertilized my mother, and I was created. They actually wanted to terminate, but both sets of grandparents shut that down fast. So, because of me, everyone was whispering about my mom's pregnant belly. It got so bad that she dropped out of the degree she'd wanted her whole life. As you can imagine, she didn't like me much after that. Actually, she straight up resented my existence. But thanks to my grandparents, I never found that out until I was 5. Because up until that point, I legit thought my mom was my sister and my grandparents were my actual parents, because she wanted nothing to do with me. If I ever tried getting her attention, she'd either completely ignore me or snap at me. And as for my dad, well, he wasn't even in the picture, so I had zero clue he existed. Meanwhile, they kept dating like nothing had changed. By the time I started walking and talking, Dad had graduated and suddenly developed a conscience. He started showing up on weekends, and I just thought he was some random friend of my grandparents that my mom hated. That's how I finally figured out that this family friend was actually my father. Once Dad landed a decent job, he suddenly wanted me to live with them. Mom was completely against it, but my aging grandparents basically forced them into it. So, at 5 years old, I reluctantly moved in with these strangers who happened to be my biological parents. Saying it sucked would be the understatement of the century. It felt like someone had turned off the sun, and throughout their emotional neglect, my mom would constantly remind me how lucky I was that they took me in, and in the same breath, she'd threaten to kick me out over any tiny mistake. Dad worked crazy hours and came home exhausted. Whenever I tried bonding with him, he'd brush me off with, "I can't deal with you right now." I went from being surrounded by love to living with people who couldn't stand the sight of me. I became so terrified of her reactions that I started doing perfect schoolwork just to finally earn her acceptance. Spoiler alert, I never did. As I got older, I realized my parents' treatment was not normal. I'd watch other parents at school drop-offs, hugging their kids, kissing them goodbye, actually smiling at them. Meanwhile, I felt like I was living with roommates who hated me. At night, I started fantasizing about there being some sort of hospital mix-up, because then I could blame the nurses for my parents' hatred, instead of myself. When visiting my grandparents, I'd straight up ask them if these people were really my parents. They always confirmed that yes, unfortunately, these a-holes were my biological parents, but they just needed time to grow up. Meanwhile, Mom took every opportunity to destroy whatever self-esteem I had. She'd mock my hair, call me fat, make fun of my glasses, and even said if we'd been in high school together, she would have bullied me relentlessly. Who says that to their own kid? But here's where things got real. She made me French toast. And when I reminded her that I had an egg allergy, I expected her to just apologize and throw it out. But instead, she refused to believe it, insisted I was faking for attention, because kids in her day didn't have all these made-up allergies. I ended up in the ER with anaphylaxis. The cops showed up to interview her, Dad completely lost it on her, and she actually cried. But something shifted after that. Mom actually started waking me up for school and helping me get ready. Dad would hang out with me in the evenings and tuck me in at night. I actually started to believe we were becoming a functioning family, but I should have known that people can't change at the snap of a finger. Anyway, when I turned 14, I discovered I had a knack for knitting. It was something my Nana, Mom's mom, taught me. By then, Grandpa had passed away, and Nana would knit these gorgeous pieces to sell at the local craft market for extra cash. With her encouragement, I set up a tiny booth next to hers at the same craft fair. The response blew me away. People actually wanted to buy my creations. Nana even suggested opening a savings account specifically for college funds, but back then, I was just a hopelessly dumb 14-year-old. And guess what the first thing I did was? I told my parents. Their eyes lit up like dollar signs, and what they did next made me wish they used a rubber instead of birthing me too. I don't have time to finish the story in this short video, but it gets intense. Click the link or go to my channel to watch it.